And it's very important that I point out again, I do this all the time on this show, that there's selectivity on the sweeping of the streets of immigrants. And Donald Trump has gotten even more open about it. He doesn't care. He's not hiding it.
Right.
He just, the latest message he sent to ICE is go stronger, go harder on LA, Chicago, New York, the Democratic bastions. And so I was in LA last week, Antonio, when the raids began, and then the response began, and then the National Guard was called in. And I view it as an attempt to really mess with the economies of these cities because immigrants are such a key part of our economy. So if Donnie went hard on immigrants across the board, he'd be messing with MAGA big time. And I say this all the time on the show. If he started going after the citizens, undocumented, who are working, let's say, in South Dakota or North Dakota, in the farm industry, it would ruin those industries in red states.
Well,
and he's not going to
remember we talked about the dairy work or the dairy farmers last time. But you didn't see Donnie's statement where he's saying, oh, we got to protect our farmers and our people that work in leisure and hotels and whatnot.
Yes.
And somebody reached out and touched him and said, hey, listen, buddy.
Yeah, you're going to kill our industries.
Right.
But he doesn't mind killing the industry in LA because they didn't vote for him.
Right.
And so MAGA is like, all this is just stems out of hate. If you support the rounding up of people and use your Maginian logic, well, they're illegal. They broke the law. Then go after South Dakota. Then go after North Dakota. Right. Don't protect your MAGA states. Don't protect your economy.
Right. And even though it's the blue states that support red states, and we all know this, right? Like blue states, their economy is what supports the red states because red states don't their economy isn't as strong as the blue states. And these industries, I mean, I told my friends, I was like, who's gonna do these jobs? Are you gonna go out and apply for these jobs? Are you, once they pick all these people up, are you gonna go be a cook? Are you gonna go, pick, what I mean? Like who's gonna do it? I'm not gonna do it. I can't give my kids to do it, to sign up for a trade or anything, much less, get them out to pick some fruit or something. Who's gonna do these jobs?
Yeah, no, there's some funny bits. I think that the Chinese have done the funny bits of like MAGA doing the jobs that immigrants do or Chinese do. It's pretty for they'll have like JD Vance and Trump working on an assembly line and they're really slow. Yeah. Elon Musk. So, all right. Well, there's a couple points right off the bat before we get to we'll hold off the military parade for dessert and deal with these things right away. Because you said something to me before we went on the mic that relates directly to what we're talking about. Two things, actually. One has to do with hypocrisy, and the other has to do with Democrats not taking a stand. So I'm going to flip a coin. Democrats not taking a stand wins. I will deal with that first. So I believe, I've said it many, many times, that the quote-unquote crisis at the border is completely manufactured, that we should have an open border, that if somebody who lives in Mexico wants to work in the United States, they should be free to come over and work in the United States. Vice versa. You want to work in Mexico, you should be free to go work in Mexico. Open border. Money goes across the border without regulation or with freely. There's some
we used to have open borders. Ben, we used to have open borders where farmers would come over, work the fields, and then once the season was over, they'd go back to Mexico.
Yeah, you can hear Ronald Reagan endorsing that. Ronald Reagan, who believes in free markets. So MAGA supposedly believes in freedom. So we should just have So I believe that. I've always believed it. I've always thought this was a manufactured crisis, and yet this is one more instance, Antonio, where my beloved Democratic Party, I loyally vote Democrat all the time, and all my lefty friends make fun of me for it. Yeah. My beloved Democratic Party always moves right, and they always feel compelled. They feel compelled to, like, I don't know what they want to prove. They got some kind of weakness. They feel compelled to prove to Republicans that they're, quote unquote, open-minded about the things Republicans say. It just means you got an opening in your mind and stuff is falling out. That's all it means. And so they go, well, yeah, we must do something about the border. There is a crisis here, and they'll endorse some monstrosity of a bill like Kamala Harris and the Democrats did last time, in order to prove to America that they're as tough on the border as Republicans are. And this has always both disturbed me and baffled me. You don't believe it. I believe that most Democrats, if you really asked them about it, you got to force. They would say, "Yeah, we want an open border." Isn't that what open trade agreements are about? Isn't what you're so proud about, Clinton? Your little NAFTA. Isn't that what it's all about? You pat yourself on the back. So why do you back away from an open border policy that will enable human beings to cross the border? Well, you do it because you've been manipulated by the Republicans into acting Republican. And so you stand for nothing, and people can't discern a legitimate difference between Democrats and Republicans. And so you feed the notion, like, what's the point?
Well, here's the thing: is the Republicans are standing firm on whatever beliefs they have, right? While the Democrats are waffling between, whether or not who are they trying to please here. And I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly when the border was closed, but it wasn't until the border became closed that people came over and then decided to stay here and didn't want to go back because they wanted to be able to send money back to their families. So that, I think that's a pretty important point to make, that before that, when the border was open, people were free flowing between, coming, working temporarily and then going back home with whatever earnings they made. When they closed the border, that's when they, stayed here because they didn't want to lose the opportunity to make that money for their families back home. But yeah, I don't understand it either. And it's the one thing that I can't get about Democrats is when they start waffling on beliefs that they have. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with helping people out. There's nothing wrong with changing policies to make the lives better of individuals that are coming over, seeking asylum, seeking a better life, seeking opportunity or whatever. Because good Lord, everybody here except for indigenous people did that. Everybody came from somewhere. Nobody that's here, especially those in charge, were originally here.
Well, I'm going to push back on something you said, and because I absolutely disagree with one point you made, and you said Republicans stand firm on whatever belief they have. I believe Republicans give the impression that they stand firm,
all right,
but they
but they all gather together and they say, okay, these are the points that we're going to stick on, and nobody moves on it, and then they don't move on it.
Well, no,
whether whether it's their belief or not, or whether it's their ideals or whatever, that's debatable. But I mean, like, as a group, as Republicans, they, for whatever reasons, are able to stick with a point. They'll get everybody on board, and follow through on it. Whereas Democrats, well, there's infighting. There's we don't want this side of the Democratic aisle, or you're too progressive, so we're not going to acknowledge you right now. Maybe if you prove yourself to us, then we might let you come on board or whatever. Or you're an independent, so we're not going to let you. That's what Democrats are known for, and that's
I put it this way. I think Republicans stay on their message, whatever message they're being fed. And no matter if it contradicts what they said the day before, they stay on it. But Republicans have no principles. They have no anchored beliefs. For instance, the one we've been talking about on immigration and the need to crack down and deport people. They're only deporting people. They're selective deportations. They're deporting people in LA, Chicago, New York, and they're looking the other way in North Dakota and South Dakota. So they don't really believe in deportations. They believe in fucking with Democrats. That's what
Yeah.
they believe
Oh
in.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, and that's where I'm where like I was headed. Like not necessarily across the board, but whatever their goal is, they stand behind it.
Yeah, that's it.
Whether okay.
Yeah. And then the Law and Order one really gets to me. I've been smiling at this one for a while. And this will come to your second point that you made, where hypocrisy doesn't matter. We'll get into that. But in Law and Order, the Republicans have somehow or other successfully convinced Americans. And again, it's not that hard to get Americans to do stupid things. We see it happen all the time. Feel free to defend American voters if you want, Antonio. But they convince Americans that they're the party of law and order. So, like, Law and Order for them is, well, we're going to lock up a bunch of lefties, a bunch of Zs with, skinny Gen Zs running around with fuck ice T-shirts on. But we're going to hail as heroes January 6th insurrectionists who really did beat up police, who spit on police, who said horrific. So wait, whoa!
You spit, we hit is what they were saying right now, the Republicans, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's all of that happened during January 6th and more. I mean, there was people beating police officers with poles, with brass knuckles. They were tasing them, they were squishing them indoors. I mean, they were doing very horrific things to these officers. And yet now it's law and order.
Heroes, yes,
right.
But you know what?
No, go ahead.
No, I saw the footage as the January 6th insurrectionists. Oh man, I've been meaning to tell you this. And just so you know, Antonio had was kind of a tough guy back in the day, and when he grew up in Chicago, okay. And he had more than one interaction with a police officer. So this is a kid who grew up in Chicago, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Okay. So I'm setting you up for this one, Antonio. This is like a spike in volleyball. All right. These guys these insurrectionists in January 6th. I'm watching this. Okay. Are walking out of the Capitol and they're passing the officers. Antonio, I could not believe what they were saying to the officers. I heard it, but I'm like, holy shit. And you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, I was taught a long time ago to be polite to police officers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I was taught a long time ago that they have all the power. So, for instance, you should be polite to them anyway. But number two, it's smart to be polite. These guys are like calling them pussies. And dropping the motherfucking pussy, and this. And I'm like, God, did you say that to a cop? And they're like, cops are taking it, and you're traitor. Call them traitors. Like the cops are traitors because they didn't join them. I'm like, Antonio, what would happen if 17-year-old Antonio Correa back at Gage Park High School, on the steps of Gage Park High School?
I can tell you exactly what happened because I've seen it happen to a lot of my friends. And it's remember back then, they didn't have these little LED lights. They had those big, I think they were Magnum flashlights, the big heavy ones with the D-size batteries in them. Yeah, those came across a couple of my friends' heads. Just defending ourselves, just talking. Like trying to. I was 17, so I didn't know much about my rights or anything like that. But knowing that it wasn't right what they were doing, trying to defend ourselves in that way. Like what do we do or what's going on? And it's like, what are you talking back? Just for asking questions. Get smacked or get placed on the hood of a hot car from the summer heat. And running all day. The engine running all day, then they make you, like put your hands on the car, like the fucking hood's hot. What do you? They put your fucking hands on the car, and then they slam you down on the fucking thing, And it's like, it's not just J6. This happens. There's videos, there's reels, TikToks, and stuff about white people walking up to police officers saying whatever the fuck they want to say to them, and they don't do shit. But yet, a minority does the same thing, and it's game over for that person. And you got to remember that when the police was created, they were created to help in the recovery of escaped slaves. So I mean that they have a long history of treating minorities and people of color differently than their counterparts.
Yeah, I to this point, I urge everybody to, if you haven't already, check out the Dave Chappelle's bit he did. It's a long time ago. It's an old bit where he recounts how he's in a car with his white friend Chip. The guy's name is Chip, and they encounter a police officer, and Chip, their law. I think Chip asked the police officer for directions. And he goes, sorry, officer, but I'm so high. I just can't figure out where I am.
Yeah.
And but so, you spit, we hit, unless you're January 6th, then we hug you.
and I don't know if you saw, I think it was Florida where their officials down there were telling, people that if you come across people that are surrounding your vehicle or whatever, just go through them. Like, what the, like,
man.
Just
did you see Big Beefy down there, that sheriff? This dude looked like just like Central Casting put the Southern Sheriff on TV. Big Beefy dude, okay? And he was like, I'm going to tell you how we do it in Florida.
Right.
We gonna rock you up and put our dogs on you. What the fuck? You're gonna put the dogs on them?
Yeah. And then if you throw bricks, then we'll tell your family where to look for the body or where they can pick up your remains or something like that. And I'm like, okay.
I now in this day and age, I've told producer Chris this so many times. I don't know if I believe anything I see on Instagram, because everything's doctored. So I'm like, is this real? Is this a real sheriff or down in Florida, or is it just some actor? So I actually don't know how real that is. It probably is real, but all right.